Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about the Slaanesh roster for the Tides of Torment DLC for Total War Warhammer 3. Starting with Dechala the Denied One, and I think she is going to be ridiculously good in battles. She doesn't have the most amount of durability, but she does have a bronze shield at the very least. However, it should be pointed out, while someone like Nakari or Scarbrand can be very dangerous in battles, it is the smaller entities, someone like Malice Darkblade on foot, that are really the terrifying ones to deal with. So when we look at Dechala, she does have Favor of the Ruinous Powers, she does have a good amount of leadership, magical attacks, anti-infantry benefits, and armor-piercing damage. So she's not going to be great at dealing with single entities, but she is going to be good at killing lords, killing infantry, due to her abilities and her stats. One of the things to point out, she does have the Whirlwind of Pleasure ability. So you use this ability, and she just does a lot of damage in a radius. She can't move while she's doing it, but she is going to tear through entire infantry blobs with this ability. And then when you consider the fact that she has a pretty good charge bonus for someone that's on foot, as well as devastating flanker, 20% physical resistance, terror, and fear, you realize that she is going to be quite crazy. And that is not all. She does have the Praise of Slaanesh, so melee defense, missile block chance, but reduces melee attack. Basically, the way Dechala works is you have these kind of abilities. You can only have one of them active at one time. So you got one between melee defense, missile block chance, for melee attack. Then you can increase your base weapon damage and armor piercing damage at the cost of melee defense. Or you can increase your armor and damage resistance by at the cost of weapon damage, armor piercing damage, and bonus versus infantry. So there are various choices you can make with regards to Dechala. Then she has the Elixir of Damnation, which reduces melee attack by 100%, removes terror, removes immune to psychology, and removes fear. So anyone who's fighting Dechala in a duel is going to have to contend with this specific ability. So you use this ability, she becomes ridiculously crazy in a kind of dueling situation. And that's before you consider any kind of items that you might give her in a battle. Okay, so that's Dechala, really good. And then we have the Masque of Slaanesh. Now, the Masque of Slaanesh is not going to match Dechala, but she does have her own benefits and battles. She is constantly dancing, though I gotta say, for one of the best demonettes that Slaanesh ever had, I think the model could have possibly been better, though her animation quality is quite something else. She is quite fast, so is Dechala. Both of them are pretty fast. So you think it's terrifying having Nakari chase after you? Well, let's just say the Masque and Dechala are even more terrifying in this respect. So what do they have as abilities? Well, when we look at them, there might be some auras that they have here. I think that's the reason I'm getting Power of the Ruinous, Favor of the Ruinous Powers right there. She's got all kinds of abilities she can use. So she's got the Waltz of Lethargy, increases melee attack for your allies in range, reduces it for enemies. You then have the Caging, which increases speed, missile resistance, but reduces speed and vigor for enemies. You have Heroic Killing Blow, Slippery, the Dance of Dreaming, reducing leadership right here, and you can basically keep this active at all times if units are in melee. Or you do have some different, you do have these kind of different options that you do have available right here. So you can only have one of these free active. So you can either reduce leadership, reduce melee attack, reduce speed. And keep in mind, Slaanesh units are very fast as is, so reducing the speed of enemy units is actually a pretty damn powerful thing. And then she has the Staff of Masques, heals vigor per second for yourself, reduces vigor per second for the enemy, and does damage. So you can either target, so you can target an enemy with this. You will heal. They will take damage. It only works if leadership is higher than broker. So it is a powerful ability. I would say the difference between the Masque and Dechala is that the Masque is more focused on buffs and debuffs, whereas Dechala is just a lawnmower in combat. Then we have the Sorcerer of Slaanesh. You have 2 lores of magic, Lore of Slaanesh, Lore of Shadows. Those are already explained in many, many videos. That hasn't changed. But basically, yeah, caster lord options. They do have a War Shrine as a mount option, so different mount options. But yeah, you either get a fast-moving mount or you get a War Shrine, different kind of benefits with those mounts. But what do we have here? We have the Rock of Inevitability, melee defense, speed, charge, speed for enemies in range. We got, we do have, or rather, sorry, that wasn't actually him. We do have the Black Tongue, so affects enemies in range. It silences them, so silencing means they can't activate abilities or use spells. Then you have the Lore of Magic that you do pick. You do have Soul Feeder, which replenishes HP when you're casting a spell. All kinds of different capabilities here. Infernal Puppet, Miscast Page Stance for enemies in range. So all kinds of benefits in terms of magic. And I would say one of the more important thing is that he has the Giver of Torturous Glory, damage per second, range 35 meter, effect range 35 meters, and effect intensity increases with each nearby entity death. So you're doing damage per second. Think of it like kind of like a Master Rune of Spite, but for Slaanesh. And then yes, Mastery of Elemental Winds, which means Mastery of Elemental Winds increases when 2 or more units in the same army share this attribute. Intensity increases the power of the spells cast. Physical resistance, Mark of Slaanesh, pretty decent in terms of survivability, though obviously not so great in melee combat. That's not the role of a cast Lord of Slaanesh. They are there to cast spells. They're not there to fight in melee themselves. Then we have Druki Anointed. So melee Dark Elf hero for Slaanesh. Pretty good armor, all things considered. Some bound spells. I think these are different, depend on the kind of choices you have. But in Skirmish, these are the options you have. You have the Lash of Slaanesh, you have Soul Stealer, you have Hysterical Frenzy. Outside of that, Sign of Depravity, all that kind of stuff available for them. Murderous Mastery. So uses 1 if you get more than 40 kills. You get melee attack, charge bonus, leadership. They have Encourage, Hide in Forest, Strider. They are mounted on a Pleasureseeker. So Druki Anointed are mounted on Pleasureseekers. This is the thing. This is the Snake DLC. You get Devastating Flanker. So does the Dechala get Devastating Flanker. The Masque doesn't, unfortunately. So that is a bit of a downside, which means that you double your charge bonus when attacking the rear or flank of an entity. Pretty useful in combat altogether. I mean, Glorious Charge is also very useful. Fortunately, you don't have that. That's how Slaanesh works with Devastating Flanker. Then we have the Exalted Hero of Slaanesh, so Melee Hero of Slaanesh. Not that we didn't have plenty of those already. But yeah, basically Exalted Hero just with the Slaanesh favor right here. So Rock of Inevitability, melee, reduces melee defense, speed, charge, all that. We got Wounds, of course. We got Disarm. If leadership is higher than Broken for enemies in range. If unit is a Lord or a Hero, so you reduce their base weapon damage, melee attack, armor piercing, weapon damage. You have the Glamour of Slaanesh, which reduces melee attack for enemies in range, Encourage, physical resistance, Mark of Slaanesh, all that kind of stuff. Heavily armored, poison attacks on the Chariot at least. Bonus versus infantry and armor piercing weapon damage with that. Then we have Striker as the legendary hero of Slaanesh. So he's got Chaos Armor, melee damage, reflection, missile block chance, right there. He's got wounds. He is himself a pretty powerful hero in melee. He's got the Sonic Boom, causes severe disruption to enemy formation, strong versus multiple combatants, and that disruption reduces speed, melee defense, and melee attack. Then you have Demonic Whispers, which increases leadership and causes terror and fear. So you're basically lowering the leadership of enemy units while increasing your own. He's fairly durable, 80 armor, bronze shield, riding a pleasure seeker, all these kind of benefits. Sign of Depravity. Effect intensity increases by each enemy unit in range with leadership wavering or lower. So the more you win, the stronger you get. You get speed and leadership. You reduce speed and melee defense for enemies within a 55-meter range. Obviously, the cost of all of these heroes is going to be a major factor. Then unit-wise, we have Sangors. So yes, every single DLC for the Monogods has given them some Beastmen infantry unit. For Slaanesh, we get Slangors 30 armor, pretty solid leadership, Vanguard deployment, Primal Fury if leadership is higher than 50% of base, so speed charge, bonus melee attack. Obviously, Mark of Slaanesh, so you get physical resistance. I believe these guys are available for Slaanesh. No, bonus versus infantry for them. I wouldn't say they're especially great, but keep in mind they are relatively cheap and they're also decently fast for an infantry unit. They're tier 2 infantry unit, so bear in mind. Then we have the Devotees of Slaanesh. You know, Dark Elves really need new hairstyles, I gotta say. It's like the army of clones, that's how you could describe this DLC. But Devotees of Slaanesh are anti-infantry. They've got the dodge ability, so they can dodge blades and missiles with ease. Right here, furry armor, 80 leadership, bonus versus infantry, but very importantly, they have murderous euphoria. So when they're in melee, they start ramping this up. So initially you get base weapon damage, armor piercing, then they get leadership on top of that, and then more damage, more armor piercing, more same leadership, but also the weakened weakened imbuement. Okay. But they've got Strider, 25% missile resistance, that's their main benefit. But then we look at Devotees of Slaanesh with crossbows. So the Devotees of Slaanesh, they've got, if we look at, if I can get this tooltip to stick out, so 20% physical resistance, 25% missile resistance. If we look at Devotees of Slaanesh with crossbows, it's the same physical resistance, same missile resistance. The difference between them is that they're losing that melee capability for crossbows. So these are Slaaneshi shades, essentially, for that. Whether or not, you know, Morathi will have access to that, we'll find out, but does Morathi really need them? I mean, she's got shades, she's got benefits for shades, so that is the question mark, I would say. These are both considered tier 3 units. Availability in the campaign, though, that's a different discussion. I can't talk about things as they are in the campaign unless Creative Assembly reveals it, and they have not. That's the reason I talked about High Elves, because of what they've revealed. They have not revealed things about Slaanesh, except Decala's starting position, which is in the Hill Landing. Then we have Regiment Renown, Heralds of Excess, Seeker Chariots. So the difference between these and regular Seeker Chariots is they're just slightly better with, so better stats, more HP, more leadership, more melee attack, all that kind of stuff. But overall, they're the same unit with the one notable change, I would say, being Perfect Vigor. So they are not going tired, they can cycle charge, they can do a lot. The thing about Pleasure Seekers as chariots, no, the thing about Seeker Chariots, rather, is the fact that because they're 4 entities per unit, it means that they don't have the pathfinding issues that certain units have. And that we're talking here specifically about chariots. So that's one of the things that makes Slaanesh deadly. And also the armor on these things is pretty good. Like 70 armor on a chariot unit is fairly good. Though keep in mind they are demonic, so you do have that downside that they'll be banished. Slaanesh is pretty strong, I think, in skirmish and PvP. Campaign Demonic is kind of a downside compared to using, you know, Chosen, for instance, mortal units. That's the thing. The mortal units of Slaanesh generally tend to be better from a campaign perspective just because they don't suffer as badly in auto-resolve. Like, it's a question of the auto-resolve, so it's the way that auto-resolve focuses on armor, leadership, melee defense kind of stats. That's the reason Chosen are so good versus any other unit. That is one prime discussion to be had about any demonic units that they're planning to introduce, but we'll find out about the campaign when they do reveal that. Then we have Pleasureseekers, yes, the boob snakes as they're called. These things are, well, let's just say they are ridiculous and leave it at that. So they're very, very fast. 100 speed. I don't know if they're the fastest cavalry unit in the game. To be sure, there are plenty that are fast, but here's the thing. There's few entities in a unit, so again, fewer entities means easier pathfinding in general for a unit like this. They're tier 4, and I think they would tear up any other cavalry unit in the game. Maybe not in a straight fight, like obviously they don't have anti-large, but they do have certain benefits. Their armor might not be the greatest, but they do have bronze shields, they do have magical attacks, they do have poison, so even in a cavalry duel, I think they can probably win against most cavalry units. These are Slaanesh, the elite cavalry of Slaanesh. They have a 60 charge bonus, but very importantly, they have devastating flanker, so that's doubled if you flank from the side. Already, Chaos Knights of Slaanesh with lances were extremely good cavalry units. These might just be better, fewer entities, though the downside is, again, they're demonic. That is not so much of an issue in battles, it's an issue in the campaign structure because, you know, replacing units you lose is not something you want to do. You want to keep your units around. It's generally better for units to run away than for them to disintegrate. Most of the time. But here's the thing. They have feasting on fear. So, effect intensity increases by each enemy unit in range with leadership wavering or lower, and replenish HP. So you have a heal on them. Their leadership is strong, their speed is ridiculous. You might have to micro them, but because there's fewer entities per unit, might just make microing even easier. So, you know, people talk about power creep. I think these guys might genuinely be the best unit in this entire DLC, and I'm not really exaggerating on this. Again, they don't have anti-large, but if you think the Merworm is the most dangerous unit, no. The Merworm is a big worm, which is a big target. These guys are not a big target. And one of the things to point out, yes, they only have 30 armor, but they have 20% physical resistance. You would need either a cavalry unit with anti-large benefit and magical weapon attacks to be able to even stand a chance against them, or you need a spear unit or halberd unit with magical attacks to be able to handle this. And keep in mind, these things have armor piercing damage a lot and magical weapons, so beating these in a straight up fight, I think that's gonna be difficult, really, for anyone. But they are tier 4, so recruiting them in a campaign, that's its own discussion. But yeah, those are Pleasureseekers, and then we have the Champions of Slaanesh. Oh yes, so we got the boob snakes, now we have the dismounted snakes. These are basically mini Dechalas, more or less. So they have 60 armor, they have magical attacks, lots of melee attack, lots of melee defense, pretty solid speed for an infantry unit. Well, monstrous infantry. 100 damage armor piercing bonus versus infantry. They have devastating flanker. They have 20% physical resistance. They have siege attacker even. Man, when you think that ogre unit, infantry units don't have siege attacker anymore because, or wall breaker because he got, I don't know, stupid, I would say. And these guys do. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, we're just gonna shove this. I mean, I guess ogres did have wall breakers, so yeah, these guys don't, but still. Then we have the regiment renowned, the Pleasure Guard. So these guys are just, well, better, right? Though, of course, keep in mind something about regiments renowned when we're judging them. Some of the strength that regiments renowned have is because they're rank 9 inherently. Whereas these guys are, you know, rank 0, so keep that aspect in mind about some of the stats that they have. But I would say the main differences between these two, so Regiment Renowned to regular version, beyond, you know, any kind of experience, it's really just going to boil down to the fact they are unbreakable. They are mortal, by the way. They are mortal units. So unlike the Pleasureseekers, who would disintegrate, these guys don't. They rout. Well, these guys don't rout. They just fight until they die, but they're so fast and there's so few entities that you can probably pull them out of a battle. And besides Regiment Renown, you kind of don't care if you lose them. Typically speaking, when I'm using Regiments Renown in a campaign, the way I use them is I use them to shore up defenses in areas where I may not be able to move my army. That is what the Pleasure Guard is going to do very, very well. I mean, I'm quite serious. Think of a unit like this. You can probably throw these guys in the middle of an army with a level 1 Lord and a garrison, then they might just kill an entire enemy army on their own. Or they'll inflict enormous casualties on them before they die. Because they are unbreakable, they have good stats, and they have unyielding assault. So the unit can never have its melee attack reduced in battle. That means these are the equivalent of Slayers for Slaanesh. And better than Slayers in every single way. They're more armored than Slayers are. They take damage far better, and they have the same benefit of unbreakable and, you know, not losing melee attack. Although I believe, if I'm not mistaken, for Slayer, it's weapon strength. Anyway, then we have the Preyton, the big flying unit. This is basically designed, I think, like some people, I think Lord Master of so take stock, and like the Preyton doesn't quite fit Slaanesh. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not going to talk about it from a lore perspective. That's not what I do on the channel. But the Preyton, yeah, it's a big flying entity that's really good. Its purpose, the way to view the Preyton in battle, is its main value is not to go after blobs of infantry. You have plenty of tools to do so. The problem Slaanesh actually has in battle is anti-large, especially with flying units. This is what the Preyton is meant to do. So the Preyton has Frenzy, so it's got a lot of damage capability. It does have wounds. It has melee damage reflection, though at the cost of melee defense. It does have Endless Malice, so base weapon damage, armor piercing damage, melee attack, and enemy units. If enemy unit routing or broken in range. It has Devastating Flanker, can fly, 20% physical resistance, 45% missile resistance. Let me tell you what the Preyton is. It's the anti-Thunder Barge unit. You bring a Preyton, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, a Preyton is cheaper than a Thunder Barge. Congrats to all the people that complained about the Thunder Barges being OP. Here's what you get. By the way, I think that argument was always ridiculous, at least from a campaign perspective. Obviously, from multiplayer, that's a different discussion, but yeah, from a campaign perspective, not so much. Even if you could recruit Thunder Barges at tier 1, congrats. You will literally ruin your economy, and you can't recruit them at tier 1. But anyway, Regiment Renowned Preyton, the Scourge of Arden. So what's the difference between the two of them? Keep in mind the unit rank difference between them. Obviously, you know, there are certain skills that are a bit different. But yeah, you get immune to psychology, frenzy, all that good stuff, all-consuming growl, devastating flanker, immune to psychology, strider. I think the difference is you can... Wait, can you hide this one in forest and you can't the other one? That's a bit weird. Interesting. So, an ambushing Preyton. I'm not sure how to feel about that, really, when I look at this. I mean, both of them have devastating flanker by the looks of it. Oh yeah, and it's also the Strider aspect. So Strider, speed and combat penalties caused by terrain are ignored by this unit. This thing is Monster Ambusher. This thing will kill, I think, pretty much any unit, any big single entity in the game. The reason it will kill every single entity, it might not be as armored as a Murder Worm, but it's not cumbersome, so it could probably do more damage. And then on top of that, it's got freaking Frenzy. So better aspect of mind, melee damage reflection. So I don't know. You know, I think it might be worth testing this regiment right now versus the Merworm regiment right now. See which wins out of the two of them. But my money would be on this guy. Just because he has less damage does not mean he's weaker. Also, yeah, he would flat win because he's got poison attacks. And that is one big advantage because it's like a huge debuff for any enemy unit. So, you know, people talk about like the Merworm being better than the Star Dragon. I mean, a Charybdis, which is a, tier 3 unit effectively, is better. This is a tier 4 one. Well, in skirmish, right? Probably tier 5 in the campaign recruitment-wise. Or is it? I couldn't tell you. But generally speaking, with some things, just because they're a certain tier in multiplayer or skirmish does not mean they're at the same tier in terms of campaign recruitment. Which, yes, does imply Creative Assembly has no understanding of basically having a unified game. It's like 10 different teams all doing the same, you know, doing their own things, which might be a problem that we'll get to later. Bam. The Preyton is a pretty big and powerful unit. By the way, side note on the subject, the Preyton is such a very important unit because a lot of people, when the Chinese League came out, were very skeptical that was true just because it indicated the Preyton would be a Slaanesh unit. Well, Tides of Torment is out for content creators, and we got the Preyton for Slaanesh. That's all I'm gonna say. Kostin signing out.